Coming to you straight from the Rio Grande and beyond, broadcasting to the four corners of the globe. So grab your seat, your coffee, or your sundowner.
Okay, everybody, here we go.
On point, as always. This is Gloves Off. Gloves Off.
Have you ever wondered about what happens in a martial arts studio? Well, you start right away by setting goals, building determination, gaining focus, building skills, all while becoming more fit, gaining confidence, and learning self-defense. Huitorn Academy is a school where attitude meets aptitude. So give us a call at 956-401-4868.
Glover Reece, trainer, coach, Shifu, what?
It's Grover, and they call me I just say coach. I have a few certificates, so I'm a full instructor in JKD and Kali under Brenda King, who's in Asano and Vunak lineage. Brenda King is a senior full instructor for Paul Vunak, and she is a associate instructor under Dan and Asano. I'm a full instructor under her. I'm a apprentice instructor under Guru Radrak Bulos. I'm a instructor and a Menkyo and instructor under and the art of Aikido Jiu-Jitsu under Kiyoshi Gary Morrow. Boxed amateurs and little pro box fights. Was taught by my dad and my family. I'm a pro coach under Eric Paulson and STX Kickboxing, which is a little elements of Savant, not to you. But mostly I focus on like the Thai boxing, the boxing aspect of it. And I'm also a pro coach in combat submission wrestling under Sensei Paulson. And blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And my first official art outside of the family was Okinawan karate, Shorin Ryu. I have a second degree black belt there. But my whole journey is really interesting because I had what they called hyperactivity as a kid, so I bounced off the walls. But my parents didn't believe in medication. My dad believed in a switch, and my dad believed in discipline, and my dad believed in having me do things to do things. So I was actually able to do martial arts as long as I got good grades, as long as I played music, as long as I did this, as long as I did that. So I could do 5 things at once and actually had the energy and the mental energy to do it well. And so that's why I was able to do so many different martial arts as a kid. You know, I'm slowing down quite a bit now. I don't practice everything. I just really stick with kickboxing and boxing now. But that was kind of like my journey why I was able to do that.
That's wonderful. You know, I met you some years back, probably about 10 years ago. It was 2013 when I went with Grandmaster Art Gonzalez, and we met Roger, and Roger's an excellent individual, one of the best out there. Brenda's great people. You all were fantastic, and you all embraced a great friendship and fellowship that we've had ever since. And just the distance is that we haven't been around.
Yeah.
You know, so, but a lot of things, you know, through social media, we see everybody and how everybody's doing, how everybody's moving, and how everybody's kind of struggling, especially after 2020 and where everything was shut down. And I want to talk a little bit about how or what are you seeing after everything was open? Because I want to kind of see what's happening in New York. Is it happening the same as it is in Texas? Is South Texas the same as Dallas? Is Dallas the same as California, and so on and so forth? Is there the mindset, the thinking's the same, or is everybody's kind of just going everywhere? Because after 2020, 21, 22, even this year, I feel that there's still a lot of fear by people.
Yeah.
How do you see that in your neck of the woods?
I still see people in gyms with masks on. grappling with masks on, grappling with N95, which they're probably actually building excellent lung capacity, but that's it. But I see that. I think that there's people who you're never going to see do martial arts again after this. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And these are folks that martial arts actually would help. These were people who were like, I just want you to think, the ultra paranoid, the ultra insecure are probably not going to come back, but the ultra paranoid, the ultra insecure are probably the ones who need martial arts the most in their life. Not because it's going to make you. I don't prescribe martial arts as the end all magic bullet to make you this tough super person. I mean, come on, if you were going to be tough, you're going to be tough by the time you're 15 anyway. But I do prescribe martial arts as something to help you achieve something in your life extra and hard that you would never achieve before. And it's a great portion of self-improvement. And so there's people who need that, who this fear fueled a lot by, I mean, it's a rational fear too, because they may have seen some people pass away, right? But they're never going to go back, and they could use it the most. And so I see a lot of hesitancy. I see a lot of people, I mean, it's getting better. Look, some schools are back to 400 or 500 mega schools, people capacity in these, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But the people who do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the art itself is a close art. So it's kind of like inevitable. But like a striking arts, I feel are really suffering because people who are striking are the type of people who didn't want to be close on each other anyway. So if it's not a grappling art, the non-grappling arts are really suffering. I've seen schools downsized. People I know with traditional, beautiful Okinawan karate schools. I mean, I'm talking about you go in, it's hardwood floor everywhere, just immaculate and
just beautiful institutes that were out there, because there was a lot of them out there.
Yeah,
it's done. They're gone.
They disappear, and it's like in the Bay Area,
30-40 years no longer around.
60% of the schools closed in the Bay Area during that time. And so a lot of kids who, like I've always had made room to teach privately kids who have a disability one way or the other. A lot of kids have emotional disabilities or, anger issues. I've always taught them since I had hyperactivity, kids with that ADHD, I do very well with. So I've always taught them privately. I've always made room for them. If they couldn't pay, then I work out a deal for them. Right. I mean, this is very important because I wanted to, my job is to help people have a fulfilled life. And I want to give the gift that was given to me. But those are the people who need it the most. And with these schools disappearing, and now what happens? So what happens, especially in California, like, if I could tell you what the rent would be, you would actually think I was lying to you.
Go for it. Tell me what it is here.
So let's say a small school that's 2,500 square feet, you're probably paying about $12,000 a month. If you're
that's too steep. Here, 2,500 square feet, you're looking about anywhere between 5 to 6.
Yeah,
and that's probably a shell. So you have to get in there, and you have to build in a bathroom and place electricity and sheetrock and everything else. So you're spending to go inside. So here in this area, so it's up there. It's kind of steep. I tell this to people that are trying to open a school or say they're going to open up a school. They better think about it, and they better think about what they're going to do beforehand and have a business plan. Moreover, so now than ever. I opened up my school with $150 in my pocket. We're talking about in Irving in 90.
Yes, sir.
And the rent back then was $600. I had 150. I told him. He goes, "Give me 100 as a deposit." I said, "I have no students. I have a couple of guys that work out." And went inside and I said, "I need the rest to put the light on." And he goes, "Oh, okay. You can." He called it in, got a temporary light. They came in there and they gave us the okay to jump in. First month, we had enough money to pay for a couple of months, and that's the way it went. But now you couldn't do that.
Right. It's if you're not established, or I mean, just even to market yourself, because there's a lot of competition. I mean, a lot of folks who they just go to gyms, if they want to work out, or I think like CrossFit and like other type of things really took away from some of the students who, some of the hard body students who just wanted to get in good shape and wanted to feel that rush of masculinity. I think a lot. I mean, there's certain things like I majority of my students are actually women, but I know like a lot of dudes, they just want to go there and feel like they're moving something and being physical. Because if you look at the average guy in California, especially in the Bay Area where I'm at, they Silicon Valley, these guys sit at a desk all day and drink lattes, soy lattes, which I make fun of them because I drink black coffee. But and I look at them, I'm like, gentlemen, you got to do something every day, or you're accelerating your demise. And so a lot of guys, I mean, there's a lot of competition with a martial arts school where, that they're just, I don't think existed like even, I would say even like 15, 20 years ago. And
In what way? Can you describe that?
yeah, so I mean, I think 20 years ago, CrossFit wasn't as big as it is. I mean, I know CrossFit was really huge. I first noticed CrossFit right about 2008, 2009. And so I would say like if it was I'm dating myself, but we took it back to 2003, right? 2004, 2005. Those things weren't there. I mean, well, your biggest competition was probably 24-hour fitness because people could go work out whenever they want. But if people needed hands-on instruction and didn't want to pay for a personal trainer was going to cost you twice as much as it would cost you to actually take a class from somebody. And so, a lot of people like the feeling that they're being taught something, new, especially I know one of the things I love as being an operations manager is when I can, and teaching so long, is when someone can just teach me something, I can just shut up and learn, just like, hey, do this, do it like this, and almost, and I don't care how basic it is, just correct the basic movement. I'm never going to take it personal because I want to not be in charge sometimes when I'm doing that, because it's hard to be in charge and learn. So I want to just learn, and I love the fact that you shut that off. I got that from a lot of folks who came to me and approached me and wanted to teach, and they're like, listen, I would be like, what do you want? How do you want to go about this? They're like, I just want you to teach me this, and you do it the way you want to do it because I want you to be in charge. And I think that people in general need that to learn. Sometimes they need not to try to have your ego involved if you can flush your ego out. So that's one of the things I would say. Gyms, also, there's just more competition for things to do for attention. I mean, we didn't have video on demand then. I mean,
You're right. There's some good stuff that came out of the pandemic. I think, like you said, there's a lot more people that are looking for do something more physical activity, a different demographics than there was before. And you have that going with CrossFit. I see CrossFit kind of push aside the bodybuilding gyms.
Yeah.
And I think that they're pushing aside not the 24-hour fitness and Gold's Gym kind of outfits, because those would always be around. But I think they're taking aside that old gym that everybody knew was down the street, that you can go over there and they could teach you how to build your arms and build, you know what I'm saying? That one that the Mr. whatever that's where his home was at, whether it was Mr. Laredo or Mr. Sanfran. That's what that Jamie went in there. I think those gyms were being brushed away with CrossFit coming in. Okay.
I would have to agree with you 100%. I used to call them the Misfits gym, where you go there and it was like, you go in there, it's the same guys in there working and some new guys in there. There's some big jack dudes in there who was lifting heavy weights, and they'd show you how to lift heavy weights without hurting yourself. And like there was a lot of free weights, not a bunch of machines or anything like that. I definitely would agree with you, because I can't think of, I mean, I go to a gym like that. It's a private gym. But I can't think of many of them where there used to be a gym like that every other block almost in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Every neighborhood had one.
Yeah. Yeah. I would like to ask you a question. So, do you find it easier or more difficult, and this is just from instructor to get folks to just try things now when you're teaching them? or do your students kind of have you break down why you're doing it more?
That's a good question. But that question, I'm going to divide it into two. If people ask, do I have people that come into the school and do they understand what we're teaching or the technique that I'm trying to get across to them? And then do people find the actual techniques of the art of Savate difficult? Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take both questions in different terms.
Perfect.
The one, do they find Savate difficult? Yes and no. If a student comes in from never done anything before, he's gonna go in and just start learning from day one. But if you got people that have done some martial arts before, like 2-3 years, they come with a pre-notion of what should be done, and the vast majority of those individuals do not want to accept something new. It's very rare that you have somebody that comes in from another martial art that really wants to learn another system to take off, and especially like Savate, right? Because Savate, it looks like boxing, looks like kickboxing, but it ain't. It's not.
No.
It's there. It's not. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like if you put a sphere and you shine light one way, it's going to look like a square, and if you shine it this way, it's going to look like a circle with a cylinder. And that's where it kind of fits in. Here's boxing and here's kickboxing. Understand what I'm saying? It shows two differences. Yeah, you can see it, but it's a little bit different as per se. I think if people that come in and do Savate, and they come in and can actually put what they've learned just aside for a little bit and just worry about the basics, they'll be tremendous. But it takes very few people to do that. Now, talking about techniques, if you're doing a technique with somebody and you're explaining it, what I have learned over the years, and because I used to explain it to perfection when my younger years, okay? And what do I mean to explain it for perfection? Well, you have to pivot, you have to move, you have to do. People will get so bombarded with stuff, they'll say, well, I can't do this, I'm leaving. So now I allow people to move, feel themselves being comfortable within that movement, and then start teaching the intricacies and start kind of fine-tuning them.
Yeah, I was super guilty of trying to explain every, like I was explaining muscle groups at one point, like you're gonna do this, and I think that's just like when you get so excited to give the knowledge that you realize that you can't. Not only does everyone learn differently, but you're trying to pour 5 gallons of water into a thimble, and you're just gonna overflow. And I mean, it's just because you perceive that as giving value, but it's actually the value is diminished because you're giving too much of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So one has to take it back, and for them to start learning at their own time, and each one's going to be produced differently. So that's what I found out through the years. It's not, Savate is neither, especially dance through Savate, it's neither a system or a style. It's kind of in the middle of both. There is some parameters. And how would I differentiate both system and style? Boxing's a style. Thai boxing's a style. Most Kalis are styles. It was my method. I'm teaching you, kind of follow it this way. Understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
and
sir.
then you have systems. Shotokan. You better be doing it this way right now, or else you're not going to get the next step. Parker Kempo. You need to learn this before you can go to the next one. Those are systems to styles. Understand? A style is very simple. Look at boxing. Everybody has a jab, cross, uppercut, hooks, overhead, override, if you want to do that. And you do this, and you do this in the world, and everywhere does the same jab, cross, uppercut, hook, but each one does it differently. And not only that, each one does it in a different stylistic form. And then each individual does it in his own manner. And that's a style, if you want to put it that way.
I have to say that's best way that I've heard it explained. It made perfect sense to me. That I used to explain it like one is like one is like algebra. You got to do this step to go to the next step, and then one is like English. You can say a phrase 4 different ways and still mean the same thing. But I mean, your style, how you described it was pretty enlightening. So I appreciate that. And just to let you know, I will steal that. I will. One of my kids gonna be like, "Oh man, this guy's so smart." We'll be like, "Yeah." I totally appreciate that.
Kind of going on. You say that you're seeing more the grappling systems flourish more than the striking systems.
Definitely, and that could have been a trend, honestly, that started before. I mean, with the.
You think that's a trend, or do you think that's something that occurred? Because if you have a lot of people that are fearing, and they're wearing masks, they're not going to go to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Well, I think that the people who were going to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they were never going to be strikers at first. And the people who were going to be strikers, I had to get dragged over to grappling. Like I got dragged over to grappling, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this because honestly, my Sifu told me you need to learn how to grapple because you need to be efficient in all ranges because this is JKD. This isn't Grover's kickboxing, right? And I was like, okay. I wouldn't have never did it if it wasn't for that. I had no desire to have a sweaty man put his belly button in my face. I had done judo before, and I had enough of that, right? But then I started learning the beauties and the intricacies of grappling and of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and started learning, actually seeing the art that it was. And so when I can get involved in the art of something, I can put aside my dislike for something and do it for a while. So I took private lessons for 3 years, once a week, and made myself do it. But like, if it wasn't from me being directed by someone I super respect to do it, I wouldn't have did it. I'm just going to be honest. I wouldn't have did it. And I think that a lot of folks are like that when they look at grappling and they say, okay, that's a lot of close, intimate contact. And over here, because I have people who go and try grappling, and then I got most of my students, because I was inside of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, but I got most of my students come over and say, you know what, I just can't deal with the closeness, and you guys are standing a few feet away from each other and hitting, and a clinch work we do would be limited, So I think it's just a mindset and a comfortability. And there's people who were striking, then they see grappling, and they're like, no, I like that more, because maybe they're worried about concussions, maybe they're worried about getting hit in the head and sparring, maybe they're worried about maybe they're worried about things that's beyond me that I can't think, because I can never interpret someone's fear unless they tell me,
But a lot of times, fear is good because we all can enter that, and it can give us a little bit of an edge if we know how to control it. The problem that happens is when we start training, or when you start training in a martial art, that fear has to be turned, and you can either turn them into butterflies or you can turn them into hornets. So you need to turn that. Sure. You have to be able to challenge it that way, and you have to do it for what it is. How can I put it? And go back with Savate. You've done Savate before.
Yes, sir.
You've seen the way I've teach, because I was there with you guys. I'm touching you. I'm showing you. Mm-hmm. I'm not kicking you to damage you. I'm not kicking you to say, look, I can kick you anytime, or I'm going to hit you hard enough for you to feel it. I'm just touching. You're going to feel the toes. You're going to feel my strikes on you because I'm teaching you. Understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And you have a lot of people that do not want to get touched. So they'll come to Savate and they'll feel the toes and the legs. They'll feel the toes, this and that. Every so often, you might go home with a nice little blue mark, but they're not beating each other up. It's not like if you go into boxing, you're already going into a seasoned boxing. Even the seasoned saboteurs, they're not beating each other up like they do in boxing. And then you start looking at kickboxing, Thai boxing, and everything else. And I'm going to break it down to the spectrum. Now you we used to train in Thai boxing. Why? Because you were in the ring in Savat, and guess what? You're gonna go train over here, and you're gonna go do a seminar with Rob Kaidman, because we were sent to go do a seminar over there and learn everything you could. Understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And nobody would be wearing shin guards. You were training without shin guards back then. You're talking about early 90s. So now you start coming, now everybody's wearing shin guards. Nobody's wearing shoes. So number one, Savat shoe is very hard to find, but then you can wear a Converse, you can wear a wrestling shoe for training. And everybody's wearing pads all over the place. And everybody's hitting a little bit sloppier and a little bit harder. Instead of taking off all that padding and kicking and touching each other, knowing where the kick is going to be for accuracy, and diminishing the power that you're doing, and you're actually learning more in the future. And I see that, and I see myself, well, that's been the downfall of Savat all along, because people don't want to touch each other. But yet, that downfall for Savat is what is a miracle grow for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're not going to punch anybody in the face, and you're not going to kick anybody in the leg. You're not going to kick anybody in the stomach. So they're never going to get hit.
You can train hard. You can train hard Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You can train really hard. And
you know what I'm saying? And I'm not knocking down the arts or anything or whatnot. You know, I respect every martial artist, what it is. But you don't see people with the injuries in Savat as you see with the injuries of the other martial arts around. And they're wearing less actual protection as per se.
I hate wearing shin guards.
Yeah.
The reason why I hate wearing shin guards is because we should not be leg kicking each other hard enough that we're going to actually do anything like that. We should have control. And so if I have some, I will put on shin guards if I have some, some young stallions who think that they're gonna, sometimes people come in and they try to make a point, which I have to admit is some of the best days in the gym, right? You get to convert. I call it, you get to convert somebody. You get to convert them over and bring them over.
Yeah, they see the light.
Yeah, one way or the other, they see the light. But I don't like shin guards. I actually like to train. I don't like the heater on. I go to a place and they turn on a heater and it's nice, and I'm like, well, okay, so we're in California, so it's only cold like 3 months a year, and maybe it's like 52, 53 degrees in here. If we start moving, we're not going to feel it. It's perfect time to train. You bring it to 68 degrees in here and we start moving, we're going to be sweating bullets, and then it's unnatural. We're not even going to have to really warm ourselves up. So, I mean, I believe in training the elements and training right, but I can say that one of the reasons why I like boxing so much is because boxers, you can go light and then somebody gets out of hand, you might beat each other up, but you have an understanding, like you don't have anything on your body. You have a cup. So somebody goes to you start going to the body hard, you get the instant feedback from both sides. Like if we're boxing, I hit you with a shovel hook to the gut, and you come back and hit me with a shovel hook with the gut, and I feel like, oh, that's a little tough. I got that feedback because I probably hit you a little tough, and then we can if we're two respectable gentlemen, we can temper ourselves, or if we're two non-respectable gentlemen, we can just have it out and then get it over with, because whatever's wrong with us, we need to get it out so we can train. So that's one of the things I like about boxing, and I like about not wearing a lot of pads, is that you get direct feedback of what's going on.
Absolutely. And some of the best friends that I've had have come out of that, and they're brothers of mine, and to the day, and that's the difference that I see, that fellowship is being dwindled in today's martial arts. Understand what I'm saying?
Not only do I understand it, that fellowship is being dwindled, and it's being eaten away by the financial structure of martial arts too. If you really want to talk about the problem, in my opinion, of California coming out of COVID, or coming out of 2020, I apologize. It's that financially, you have to charge too much for what you're offering. I have to sit here and tell somebody, okay, like There are schools that's $350 a month, $400 a month. And it's like, okay, so now you have only a certain class of folks who, which is categorically against what martial arts was. Categorically, like if you go to Bruce Lee was told he couldn't teach black people. His first student was black. Bruce Lee was told he couldn't teach white people. Second student was white. You know, categorically, like you look at Kali, you go to someone's house, you pay their dues, and their family teaches you. It was affordable. These martial arts, especially the martial arts I've done my whole life, boxing, they're poor man's martial arts. You know, they're affordable, and the people who need them the most, the people who are going to get in trouble, who need that discipline, are unable to have that because of the price. So you have that price pulling away, and then you have the legitimacy and the feedback pulling away of you just mentioned. So you have this, and it makes it super difficult for a martial artist to really build a system that's not a McDojo. So here's the thing: like you have to circle drill where you push somebody, you throw a punch, and you make them circle into your kick. I was going to say a roundhouse, but I know you're not going to call it a roundhouse. I apologize. I forgot what it's called. And I totally use that all the time. I'm like, listen, he's using an educated punch to make you move somewhere. He's using an educated jab or an educated cross. That cross isn't to hit you. That cross is to make you move your feet so you can run into his leg. I'm like, this is beautiful, right? And it's right off of the circle, because the footwork they're going to use, they're going to circle around you because they're not going to back straight up because you're just going to hit them. And so, and then when you kick them, and you just get them a little feedback, just a little touch right here, right? And I'm like, and that touch right there is to let them know that if that hand wasn't there, they would hurt. So you're saying keep your hands up. When you lose that, you see people who've gone to all the way to what they would call a black belt level and never spar and never have that feedback. And then the problem is these guys go out in the world saying they're a black belt, and they just get beat up.
You know, yeah, I believe you're preaching to the choir, but this is what I say to that. Number one, martial arts is the only business that you cannot put money or a charge amount to. Okay, explain to you. You can't say, well, I'm charging. Gee, I should be charging $65. No, I should be charging $100. No, I should be charging $500. I should be charging $350. What should I price myself at? Yes. Okay. Well, I trained so much, and I remember that I used to, have blisters in my feet when I was going into the gym because they made me work so hard. I used to go home with black eyes. I had to eat ramen soup to pay Sifu his money. How do you comprehend all that and put it together into one? Well, it's very simple. You look at the demographics of where you're going to open your school and take a 3-mile demographics of where you're at, of what's the cost of living and what's the average income. And that's how you formulate what you're coming from.
Yeah.
But you might be surprised. You might actually be not charging enough in certain areas. And then you might be charging way too much in other areas. So you have to look at the demographics of the yearly income to kind of state where you're going to be in there. And then you have to look into how many students. If you have a minimum of 20 students, okay, and you have $12,000, are you going to charge each one $1,000? How many students do you have? How many students would you need if your monthly rent is $12,000, like you said over there? Okay, it's $12,000, and you're going to charge everybody $100. You need 12,000 students just to pay the rent.
Yeah.
So you have to start making those figures and start to say, you know what?
Right.
Guess what? The rent, the tuition here is $350 a month or $400 a month, because that's what needs to happen. That's what the demographics are pushing. And sometimes and sometimes a lot of people can't make it because of that.
Yeah. My business model that I operate now is I just do private lessons.
I tell my son, and I tell everybody else that's running around, because my son's now in college, and I tell him it's going to come a time they're going to tell you, teach me. You have all the right to. You've earned it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're luchador and survive, you can teach. You played with the best.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, not me saying all the other professors that come in every year. You know,
Absolutely.
you know what I'm saying. Since you were a kid, you've been around them all. And you look at them and he kind of just laughs. And I said, because there's going to come a time. What you need to do, I said, maybe some of these gyms that like you're doing over there, some of these gyms that are doing over there, and start doing privates and everywhere else. See if they can let people freelance instead of actually opening up a no school.
My dream has always been to open up a school, but I looked at it and I said, I'll open up a school one day, or maybe I won't. But I realized what my dream was to open up a school, but why? So I could teach. So my dream wasn't opening up a school. My dream was teaching. And so I realized that I could start teaching right away if I just get somebody to, I taught someplace. Where I'm at now, I have a really good deal, and my program ended there over a year ago, but I was allowed by the grace of a good friendship and a good relationship, and just being a stand-up human being. I mean, first thing I tell people in business relationships, manners and being just an honest person will take you a lot of places in the world. I know it's a forgotten art. Relationships are important. I know we live in this digital world where 90% of my interactions have been on Zoom for the last 4 years, right? Just like now. I understand that, but real life, being mannerable takes you a lot of places. So when my program ended, I was still allowed to teach my privates there because of how I acted. And a lot of people weren't. A lot of people weren't there, but I was, because how I act and how I conducted myself. And I'm known as somebody who's going to treat their place like my place, meaning that I'm going to, I could be home and I'll be like, did I lock up? I'll go back and make sure it's locked up. I'm not going to just, it's out of sight, out of mind. So having access to that with a very limited, just paying a limited amount, and then having people always invite me to their places to teach. It's been a godsend. So I'm actually able to still teach and still put my vision of martial arts out there, and um, and the places are fewer than they used to be because there's not a lot of people open anymore. But I'm still able to educate some folks, and I get some really good compliments. I have people tell me that it was a pleasure to train with me. And that's probably more gratifying than any amount of money anyone can give me. Because if someone I haven't trained with for years tell me, "Hey, I really appreciated my time with you," that's probably more important than almost anything, except nice meal and healthy family. That's I'll put that over there, but I'll say
Absolutely.
I'll say humbly, or just being able to martial arts has enriched my life in a way where a kid who was I say I was a non-select kid, I was a nerd, but I was a nerd in a football player's body, so I didn't get picked on, right? So, I'm a big kid, but I loved jazz music and things that other kids didn't like. Even though I liked the popular music at the time, I was enthralled with jazz music. I was enthralled with martial arts. I was enthralled with history, of traveling, of seeing different places of the world, the Seven Wonders, who built them, who built Washington D.C., who were the architects of Egypt, who are the architects of the Nile, who like how did the Nile function, and all of these things. I just recently, right pre-pandemic, went and shot a film documentary in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, which is the coldest capital in the world, just because how do people live at a -3 degrees? And it's called a lot of jackets. But I've always been that type of person. So most of my real relationships have come through martial arts. That's how, if I look at my close friends, I have a podcast that I do, a social commentary podcast, and he's he's a martial artist, and people I talk to on a day-to-day basis that I have real close relationships with, they're martial artists, or at least boxers, or which to me boxing's a martial art because they use it in the military. So
Absolutely. I consider them the same way. I consider them the same way.
Excellent. And so I just want to be able to enhance people's life, or just give them an opportunity, because at one point I was a kid who couldn't afford to show in root school, and I came in there and I cleaned up. They let me clean up, and let me tell you something. Cleaning a real traditional Japanese school, you clean I cleaned. I had to condition the wood once a week with wood cleaner and wood conditioner. Uh, I washed laundry. I did all types of stuff, but that was my rent, and I wasn't too proud for it because I wanted to go there. You know.
You see, you don't see that much anymore. You might give scholarships to some kids. We do that here. We have scholarships for plenty of kids that just can't make it, and it's usually the parents or the grandparents that don't bring the kids. You know, the kids are here, they love it, and so on and so forth. We had one grandmother, the kid was doing fine. One grandmother tells me that, why are we having the class at the same time that she has her soap opera?
How dare you? How dare you, sir?
And I was like, so she says, I'm not gonna bring him back. And I'm like, well, I mean, he's for free. I mean, he's on a scholarship. He can come here. And she says, I'm going to drop him off at 4:00. Yeah, but we don't open till 6. It starts at 6:30. What's you going to be doing here at 4:00?
Yeah, hanging out.
So
yeah,
it's I think kids want to do it. I think the lack of discipline of some of the parents that don't pass it along. I think that's where the problem is that we have.
I would 100% agree with you. I think that parents are far different. My parents of my generation insisted that you do something. Oh yeah, you need to play football. Oh, you're not going to play football. All right, you don't like football. Okay, well, you need to do this. All right, you're not going to do this. All right, well, you need to go to karate, or you need to do this or that. It was like parents of my generation insisted that you did something, and it wasn't always. And like my father never allowed me to take any trophy under second place. So third place, it just didn't exist. The famous story I tell all the time when they tell me they want to understand the motivation that I was given is that someone tried to give me a fifth place trophy before. My dad threw the trophy away and went up to the coach and said, "Don't you ever give my son anything like that again. Don't ever reward my son for being mediocre. There's 10 people running and you give them a trophy for being average." And that was just to let us know that average isn't good enough.
I've been to martial arts places and I saw this tournament that I was invited to. Everybody got a trophy? Everybody got a trophy.
Well, why don't we give the parents trophies then? Why don't we get the people who didn't do anything trophies?
Like everybody was getting a trophy, and there was one first place, and there was a second place. Then there were like 3 thirds and a bunch of other trophies in there, and everybody got a trophy. And I was like, okay, whatever. And I left, and I was like,
no. And that's that.
Because guess what happens? Because that kid that was in the front, that was training, busting his rear end, going over there and training and at home, kicking the bag, moving to learn his timing. For him to win that tournament, he's gonna say, "Why do I have to work that hard? I'm gonna get a trophy anyway."
That's the problem. We cannot incentivize, especially an extracurricular activity. Extracurricular activity means that this is something that you've chosen to take your time out of. So that means that you have to understand, this is where you learn everything. Look, you don't learn a lot in school. I'm sorry. I didn't learn how to win or lose in school. What I learned in school is that I need to show up. I need to show up and shut up. That's what I learned in school. Show up, shut up, and do your work. Okay. But I learned martial arts, basketball, things like that. This is something I want to do. Oh, you want it. You got to work hard for it. You want it. Do you want it or not? Then you have to work hard for it. And I think a lot of martial artists, I mean, we could have a discussion about the newer martial artists. There's a lot of great ones, but a lot of them are semi-motivated. I mean, I think the rank and file martial artists that I used to see, a person who would come in and maybe be a student and they would go gung-ho, 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 and then there would be a little taper off, but the taper off would be because their body wasn't prepared to go as hard as they tried to go. And then you would pull them aside and say, "Hey, listen, take some rest days. You don't have to come like 5 days a week if we're open. Do this and do that." And then they would be really great students after they learned themselves. Now I see folks who come in and they're like, "Okay, well, I'll come in and I'll kind of goof around a little, and it drives me crazy, but it is what it is. Come in, goof around a little, and then we'll pop in and pop out and pop in and pop out." And especially when I was running my class, these folks would always ask me, well, when am I going to get promoted? And then I realized, oh, you're one of those folks who think you just get promoted. And I said, you promote yourself through effort, time in, and achievement. I just sign it. You got to put in the work. Like, could you imagine if I came up to you to, all right, I'm gonna train with you, professor, for 3 months, and I'm like, hey, where's my promotion? Man, if you didn't kick me out of your face, I wouldn't respect you.
You know, um, I see that. So that's why you have to from get one. And this is how I figured it out some years ago, but 15 years ago, more or less, probably, yeah, was you have to put when they come in, you have to set them down with a not only protocol, you have to also with a goal set. You see, I hate to use it this way, but you have to set goals to get rank. It's kind of like a little kid. Go do your chores, and you're gonna get to watch a movie or what have you, right?
Right.
So what you do is, in Savant was that way because Savant you had to learn so much stuff, and you better learn it because there's going to be a test for this glove. Okay, whether it was blue, green, red, whatever. So you have to start that off from the beginning. So within the first 2 weeks, I would give them, this is your curriculum for your test. Here it is. Learn it.
Yeah.
Some students still have the papers of 15, 17, 18 years ago, and they have them in a notebook and they have things in the back written all over the place. Those are the serious ones. The other ones, you will find it in the bathroom or you'll find it out inside in the parking lot or what have you. And they were the same ones that would come back 2 weeks later and say, what do I need to learn to test?
I gave it to you.
Yeah, I gave it to you. So every time there's something that is done, I point out, this is what we're studying, or this is what we're covering today, or this week, or what have you. And this is for you, red glove, or this is for you guys that are green, or these. So learn it.
Yes, sir.
And people would now have a little bit more of a prolonged. I don't have those people asking as much, but every so often you do get them.
Yeah. So do you find that like by having that set curriculum, I always had a curriculum, but I would kind of pop in and out of my curriculum, and and I would always do Q&As to have people ask me anything they want, and like if they see because everybody's different, so how to kind of fix them a little. But do you find having that curriculum just really helps with retention and also helps focus like the class to push it along? Because
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing that can happen to an instructor is you kind of like almost feel like you're spinning in circles because you keep going back to help this person, and you kind of like hold everybody back a little to make sure they get it this day. Okay, because this is super important. And maybe if let's say you have 10 people and there's 3 of them not getting it, you're like, okay, well, that's 30%. I need to like maybe teach this a little differently. But
I figured this out a long time ago, and this was a professor told me this, and I was still in France then, and I was worried about this kid couldn't kick high, just couldn't kick high. Everybody else could kick high. They all started about the same time, and I said, I just can't make him kick high. I've tried everything, stretching and so on and so forth, because you have to understand that sometimes physical limitations exist.
Mhm.
Not everybody's going to be the same.
Exactly.
And when there's physical limitations, or the person's does not have the ability to kick high, but he can kick midsection like a bat out of hell, or low line, or anything else, well, then that's called circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
He has to go around that because he's going to have to learn how to fight around what he's learning.
Yeah.
So only because he can't kick high like everybody else does not mean that he can't kick to midsection better or faster than anybody else, because he was actually doing pretty good. It was just kicking above here, he couldn't kick.
Yeah.
And so then when he told me that about circumstance, then I started realizing not everybody's built equal.
Absolutely.
Not everybody's equal. Not everybody has the same environmental uh, growing up experiences. Everybody's a different person. So you have to take everybody that comes in differently. And you can't adjust to them. You teach. They have to adjust and they have to adapt to the system that is there.
Mm.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Because if you got a guy in boxing and somehow his hand can't extend, it's just the way it is because something around here, but he can throw a hell of a hook. You know what I'm saying? So he's just going to be adapted that way. That something physically is impairing him from moving his straightening his arm. It stops right there. So what's going to happen? Does that mean he can't fight? No, it just means that he's going to have to adapt with something else.
Yeah, and I think we all like one way or another work around something. I mean, I tell you my knees and my ankles ain't what they used to be, and so like we're all working around something.
Now, here's a question going on there because from coming seeing this from Texas going towards you, and you're back into now where everybody's moving forward and gearing up and leaving 2020 far behind.
Yeah.
What do you think people are actually wanting to learn? Are they actually wanting to learn a martial art as for a system, or because I want to learn that style over there, or they want to learn it for self-defense? What is the bound? Is it the tradition? Is it the culture, or is it self-defense now?
I think for most people right now, it's the culture of just getting out and doing something. I mean, I have to be honest, like if you, I mean, I put it to like when you tell a kid that they're on restriction and they keep bumping themselves or doing something, they come out of the room too quick, and so they got to go back in the room. When you finally let them out the room, they just want to do everything, right? And so that's how I feel like all of 2022 was. It's like they just want to do everything. Now I see folks like, especially I have some longtime private students, and when I get new students now, they talk about self-defense. That's all they talk about now is self-defense. And I'm just going to take this from my privates because we have intimate conversations. When I sit down with someone in private, first thing I ask them is that, what do you want to achieve and what are you worried about? Like, why are you here? Are you trying to just, I mean, I have an older lady who does karate, and she just wants her school, they just don't push her enough. So she wants a really big workout once a week. Hey, I'm your guy. I got you. That we do all the old school Japanese workouts I used to do when I was starting karate. It's really great for your hips, great for your balance. She loves it. I have a kid who I've had him for a long time, but he kind of fell off, and then he came back to me, and he was like, "Hey, can we pick up on some our boxing and some I call it sprawl and brawl, like boxing for MMA. Avoid a takedown, stay on your feet." I said, "Of course. Why?" Well, at his high school, he was getting jumped. He was getting messed with, right? And he trusts me to teach him self-defense because he was getting bullied when he was in 7th grade, and like years before, and he just sticking up for himself, just the confidence kind of backed the kid off. Well, now these kids are a little more serious. And so I have people who are approaching me, especially with the homeless situation we have in California, which I don't know how bad it is in Texas, but in California, it's I've been here since the early 80s, mid 80s, and I've never seen anything like this. I mean, I've never seen so many. I mean, I'm talking about, we have RV cities now. We have 10 cities in the Bay Area. And part of me feels very bad for folks because they don't have a place to live. The other part of me, I'm confused of how can we have so much money in the Bay Area and we spend so much money on programs. So I always, as my dad would say, well, someone's stealing something.
Yeah. Something's going on. It's not right, and unfortunately, I'm glad that to have you here today.
Yes, sir.
I'm glad to see how you're doing and how everything in California is doing, especially. And it's kind of about the same as it is in the eastern states and in Texas. It's kind of about the same.
Right.
People need, I think right now more than ever, I think people need to be more in a structure.
Yeah.
And when students come in, they have to be in that structured class, not the structured class, and just leave them there for a while until they really start learning and appreciating. And because I think that's 2020 brought that into everybody. Everybody had to do everything. So those people that are coming back out, they're still in that mindset that if they say jump, you have to jump. If you have to say walk, you have to walk, you know? So you have to kind of, once in line and once a curriculum is done and set, this is what you need for this level and this is what you need for this other level.
Right.
I think people will progress in a little bit longer, and the jujitsus do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I think that happened with, just to speak to that, to 2020 was that a lot of folks also like the structure that they had of going to a job, going to a place every day. And I don't know how to work remote system here, but 50-60% of people just work from home here. And so, and people don't have big places here. So you have like 5 people in a living room working all day. I'm surprised there wasn't more like domestic assaults on roommates. But you know, like when you used to have to go to a place, all right, and you got to be there at a certain time, and like you leave at a certain time, and it sets a structure. I think people really need structure. And so I think like people going in and they're going to a place and they're like, okay, well, at least here we have structure. I know what I can expect. You know, I know what's going on. I know what to do, and I know how it looks. And we had such uncertainty and a lack of structure, and we had that. I mean, I think Texas came out of it a lot quicker. I know Florida came out of it quick. We had it for over a year of just uncertainty.
We had it like wishy-washy, but we had it.
Yeah.
I mean, you still had the rumblings that they're going to do this, and the rumblings and the threats and everything else, and
yeah,
you saw the ugliness emerge, and
wow.
Unfortunately, this a lot of the martial arts schools took a pounding, and unfortunately, those that were around for a while and were able to bob and weave and move forward are the ones that survived it.
Well, I think the folks I seen who survived, they had resiliency of an understanding. Like they had been, if you had never been through a recession before, you were toast. Like if you didn't know what to expect. I mean, I seen people who were just mortified. They were just like, it's all gone. And just that's a lot of stress and trauma to deal with.
Absolutely.
I will tell you that I am relieved that folks like yourself, like the Inasano Academy, people who are been around and who teach real martial arts are still in business. I mean, I'll say that personally. I'm relieved. I mean, besides the fact that I have an affection for you, you know, but that was my biggest fear, that there was a lot of good people who were teaching good stuff. This is culture. And this is a part of American culture that's fleeting. Defense, masculinity, it's fleeting in a lot of ways. And so I'm very pleased that, you know, like, you know, I seen some folks survive that. I mean, quite honestly, I was just worried about everybody. Like every restaurant I like closed and people eat every day. So I'm like, what about martial arts? You know, so I would say that I was quite relieved, you know, and actually happy when you reached out to me, actually.
But we'll get together. We'll get together soon. Hopefully this year we all can do something, whether over there or down here. We'll get busy.
Well, if my plans hold up next year, I'll be going back home to Houston area anyway, so it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah,
it'll be a lot easier. I go back home, and me and the family, and we'll be it'll be a little more sane. I know what I want. I know what I want to ask you. Can I ask you one? Because this is your interview, and I know I've been asking questions, but it's also because I don't get to talk to. I don't get to talk to a lot of folks like martial arts, right? Because we're so scattered. When you teach folks and you're teaching, like, because one thing I did notice about your teaching, like when I was talking to you in our conversations and that time that I seen you at the seminar, you were very self-defense oriented. I got the idea that this was not a martial arts just for being pretty. And Savat's beautiful. You have to understand that. I call Savat like one of the beautiful arts, like where you look at it and you're like, man, this is gorgeous. But also our conversation, our talking, and you touched me a little, and I was like, okay, he's touching spots on your body where, like, this is the back of my ear. This is gonna knock me out. This is gonna hurt. This is not gonna be something that's like a flash. This is gonna be like, oh, I gotta get up and this person's safe. So, do you teach environmentally, like what's going on in your environment are according to the laws, or do you just teach your system? If that makes sense, and I can give you an example of what I mean if I didn't make sense to you.
If environmentally, you're saying, like, do we understanding the laws of the land?
I mean, like, okay, so in California, I don't teach anything with that has to do with a handgun, because my law-abiding citizens can only use it at their house anyway. Which I know, like, to me, it sounds crazy because, most of my family's in Texas. So we're like, what do you mean? Right? So, but I don't, so like when people come and they ask me anything about a firearm, I'm like,
yeah, I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you this way. In the 1800s, there used to be one of the major professors of Savate in the 1800s. His name was Hubert Le Brochure.
Mhm.
Hubert Le Brochure was a Savate man. He was not a box français man. He was a Savate. He was a student that came out of the first school of Savate, of Michel Cassou. There was another guy that came out, another very prominent figure. I'm gonna reason why I'm gonna tell you. His name was Charles Lecour. Charles Lecour is accredited to have been the one that designed and founded what is Boxe Française. So you had two distinct arts kind of going, Boxe Française and Savate. Boxe Française had a little bit different striking, a little bit of different. One came out of the other. Boxe Française came out of Savate. And they kind of rode parallel from the 1800s to 1978 until they merged to what you see now, which is Savate Boxe Française. So that's just a little bit of history there. But Le Brochure and Charles Lecour, they used to say this: Charles Lecour is the prophet of Savate. Le Brochure is God.
Mm.
And when several professors, that I met, some Count Baruzzi, Sylvain Salvani, my professor Lafont, they all used to say this, like if it was, they were closer to that flame. And his Le Brochure's saying would be, if I do not have my pocket pistol,
Mhm.
I have my cane, knife, but I always have my boots on, and that's what Savate is. So it's always been entwined, right?
Yeah.
In Texas, you can use a gun. In Texas, you can do that. I don't teach that in the school.
Mhm.
And I don't teach it in the school for many reasons. In today's world, and if you look at statistics and stuff like that, in today's world, here in the United States, a fight is not going to, it's going to average anywhere between 8 to 10 seconds. That's FBI stats.
Mhm.
If it goes past 30 seconds, it goes into 40 mark, both are going to be in the ground, or one's going to be in the ground, or both are going to be in the ground, or there's going to be a confusion. Usually because you have some hero jumping to try to stop it.
Right.
Okay. But you have to worry about those 10 seconds. You better be good enough to be able to take down the person. So I tell martial artists this: go look at yourself in the mirror and say, can I do that? Is my punch strong enough to cause enough damage to somebody? If I hit somebody with my punch, am I going to cut him? Or is he just going to smile and look at me? If I kick you, do I have that speed and that strength to penetrate in there? Hitting the bag is one thing. Hitting pads is another. On the toes and on the ground when you're moving with somebody, can I actually do that? Now, can I do that wearing jeans? Or can I do that wearing a three-piece suit?
Yes.
Understand what I'm saying?
100%.
When you look at when you look at the world, and let's go from Victorian age to probably 1960s, okay? There were a lot of mafia around. Mafias all over the place, from the Chinese mafia to the Italian mafia to all over the place, all over Irish, all the mob was all over the place. What was the major what did the enforcers train in? What? Boxing? Wrestling?
It would be boxing and wrestling.
That's it.
Yeah.
And wrestling, maybe, but when I say boxing, I usually go into box francais or something else in that nature. So when I say boxing, for folks that are listening, that's the pugilistic arts.
Yeah, so some type of striking art.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who were the ones that, those were the guys that were the tough guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, and everything else. There's a lot of other things that come around there. And there's, the rough and tumble that was around in the U.S. of what many people claim. But so when you teach, you want to teach for them to be able to attain that discipline and attain those skills. Understand what I'm getting at?
Yes.
And if you teach somebody, for example, to kick hard and fast and to exert all his energy kicking hard and fast, but the guy is kicking you right here where it's not going to do anything to somebody your stature, my stature, then what good does it do if he doesn't have any accuracy?
Absolutely. Matter of fact,
you understand what I'm saying? So my goal is to be able to teach people the enough skill that they can build upon themselves in order for them to protect themselves. God forbid something happens to them.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely the right way to go. I tell them, you're gonna leave me, you're gonna have a good jab, a good cross, you're gonna have a good leg kick and a good groin kick. I said everything else we can do is gravy. When we get into somebody gets close to you, you knee them, you elbow them, you headbutt them, you grab them, you do whatever. But as far as your distance, I want you to have great, and I teach a lot of footwork, a lot of like avoidance. I think that the best thing I heard was one of my students got into it. They said, yeah, this guy came after me. I said, what did he do? He says, I circled, I used my footwork, and I ran away. I was like, oh, you won big. No conflict, because the biggest thing is like it's never going to be good, because if you go, you have the law involved, getting sued.
In today's world, you might be getting assaulted and everybody pulls out a camera, and all of a sudden somewhere along them assaulting you gain a strength, and you hit them just right, and all of a sudden, bingo, the person falls down, hits his head on the curb.
You're the bad
They're
guy.
coming after you.
And I actually
everybody has a phone. Everybody has a camera.
Everyone has a phone, everyone has a camera, and everyone has a narrative. And that's the biggest thing. It's like thank God that there wasn't, like, especially when I was bouncing a lot in the city, and guys would get on the line, and I'm always like, believe it or not, I'm always super polite. Regardless, I'm always like, listen, man, you're here to have a good time. I'm here to make sure everyone has a good time. So let's just all relax and have a good time. If you got to leave, I'm going to ask you respectfully and say, okay, we're going to see you out. Because look, I got the numbers. I got 6 gigantic Samoans with me. I don't need to act like I'm a tough guy. I need to like try to make sure that we don't need to physically. It's a bad look if we physically got to throw you out. It's not good for business. It's not good for everything. But there'd be times where like I'd have to maybe, I have to maybe lock somebody in the EKO, put them on the floor, and then pick them up and walk them out. And they're screaming because I got a gooseneck on them. And if I did that today with cameras, I would look, no matter what the situation is, because a lot of times I'm bigger than these guys. I would just look like I was just this big mean dude slamming this guy around. And it's like, and it's the furthest, trust me, it's the furthest thing I want to do. I don't even want to touch somebody. I would prefer that everybody come in, mind their manners, pay their money, tip the bartender, so I can get tipped out also at the end of the night and leave. That's what I like people to do, So, but now with this narrative that goes on, like and especially there's a narrative for guys like, oh, look at this big aggressive guy. There's this bully narrative that even if somebody's doing something, only thing they got to do is just not just cut the film off or just start filming late. And it's like, well, you're doing something for no reason.
Or they clip it, they'll clip whatever and they'll do that to this one. They'll do that to all of them. They'll clip a portion. See what he was talking about here? That's, he hates Mongolian fart wrestling, and you know what I'm saying? You're like, no, it's not, that has nothing to do with that, So,
if for the record, if there's any fart wrestling out there, I would just be interested just how funny. I would just be interested how funny it'd be. I'm like, hold on, you guys are fart wrestling. Hey, okay.
You know what I'm saying? You're like,
hand me my nose plugs and I'm all in. But no, absolutely. And then it comes to a thing too, where, I mean, heaven forbid you've said anything wrong here. It's just too much. It's just too much. I would rather just teach folks. I don't need to be out there because, only thing I'm going to say, I'm going to tell people, thank God that there was no camera phones in the 90s. Thank God. When I was a young man and being a young, rambunctious young lad who I actually had the pleasure of living in Europe for 2 years, traveling all through Africa and every place I wanted to go, and saying them, just being young and dumb. Thank God nobody got it on film. I can now be a distinguished person and a nice guy I am now.
But it's been fun. We will get together.
Yes, sir.
Coach, Reece, and we'll get it done.
Yeah,
we'll get together, whether over there or over here. We'll do something.
Okay, and thank you so much. It's good to talk to you. God bless you and your family, and all your students. I just hope you thrive, man. That's my only hope for you, is that you thrive, sir.
Likewise, a feeling's mutual. And that's where we have to go now and say hi to Seafood Brenda.
I definitely will.
And tell her to see how she's doing. Hopefully she's doing well.
Yeah.
And Guru Agabalus, I'll touch base with him later on this week. He's a good guy.
And Roger. I don't have the opportunity to train with him that much anymore because I just limited myself because I had so much going on in my family and everything. But that gentleman you spoke of is probably one of the best martial artists I've ever seen live in flesh in my life. I've seen a lot.
He's a good man. He's good. He's good.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Until next time. Much peace.
All right, sir.